Imagine a field in Belgium. Today, in 2026, a farmer is plowing his field when his tractor suddenly explodes. The reason? A shell fired 108 years ago. Every year, about 900 tons of unexploded World War I ordnance are found in Europe. The French call it the Iron Harvest. A war that ended more than a century ago still kills. And there's a specific reason why there are so many of these shells. Artillery caused 70% of all casualties in World War I. 70%. Not machine guns, not bayonets, not gas. Artillery. That's the main theme of this video, how a technology that's several centuries old suddenly turned into an absolute death machine and defined what industrial extermination would look like. Let's start at the beginning. Gunpowder was invented by the Chinese sometime in the 9th century for fireworks and flares. By the 14th century, Europeans had already fashioned the first bombards from bronze, rough pipes that fired stone balls. Accuracy was terrible. Rate of fire was 2 shots per hour if you were lucky. But even then, it became clear the one who hits from afar has the advantage. By the 19th century, cannons had become steel, rifled and loaded from the breech. But one fundamental problem remained: recoil. After firing, the cannon rolled back several meters. The crew had to roll it back, aim again, and aim again. Rate of fire was about 2 shots per minute, slow, inefficient. And then in 1897, the French introduced the 75mm field cannon, Canon de Septuaginta Quinque Model 1890 Septem. The world saw something fundamentally new: a high-drop pneumatic recoil brake. The mechanism is simple. A cylinder with oil and compressed nitrogen absorbs the recoil energy. The barrel rolls back, then smoothly returns to its place. The gun remains in position. There is no need to re-aim. The result? The rate of fire increased from 2 to 30 rounds per minute, 15 times. One calculation could fire 30 shells while the enemy fired 2 shots. This is not evolution, it is revolution. France kept the technology secret, considered it a strategic advantage. And, indeed, until 1914, the 75 was the best field gun in the world. But no one understood what this meant for the future war. 1914. August. Europe enters the war with plans designed for a quick victory. The German Schlieffen Plan provided for the bypass of France through Belgium in 42 days. French Plan 17 was offensive in Lorraine and Alsace, return of territories lost in 1871. Everyone expected a maneuverable war, like in the time of Napoleon, only with trains and machine guns. No one expected a siege. The first surprise? Belgian forts. Liege, Namur, massive concrete fortifications built according to the latest standards. They were considered impregnable. German field guns did not penetrate them. Then the Germans brought Big Bertha, a 420mm howitzer from Krupp. The weight of the shell, 820 kilograms. One shot, and the 2-meter-thick concrete dome turned into dust. The fort in Liege fell in 2 days. The impregnable fortifications turned out to be a trap for their own garrisons. The second surprise, battle on the border. On August 22, 1914, the French infantry advanced in the Ardennes. They attacked in columns in bright blue uniforms and red trousers. German artillery met them with shrapnel. One shell, hundreds of bullets fly in a radius of 30 meters. The French die by the hundreds, not reaching the German positions. In one day, 27,000 killed. The bloodiest day in French military history up to that point. The third surprise, the impossibility of a breakthrough. By September, the front froze from the English Channel to the Swiss border. 700 kilometers of trenches. Attempts to advance ended in massacre. The infantry came out of cover and came under artillery fire. No one could advance. Everyone dug in. A war of positions began, not because anyone planned it that way, and because artillery made any movement in open terrain suicidal. And here the next problem appeared. The armies began to use up shells faster than anyone could have imagined. The French before the war produced 14,000 shells per day. In September 1914, they used up 200,000 per day. There were only enough supplies for a few weeks. The shell famine began. The British press made a scandal. It turned out that soldiers at the front were receiving a limit, no more than 3 shells per gun per day. 3, when the Germans were producing thousands. The Battle of Neuilly-Chapelle in March 1915 failed precisely because of this. Artillery preparation lasted 35 minutes instead of several hours. The infantry went on the attack on undamaged positions. The result is predictable. The solution was found quickly, but it required the transformation of the entire economy. Civilian industry switched to military orders. Women came to the factories en masse. Men were at the front. By 1916, Britain was producing 1 million shells a week. France, more. War turned into an industrial process. The winner is not the one who fights better, but the one who produces more. But another problem arose. How to shoot when you can't see the target? The trenches were separated by hundreds of meters of no man's land. The German positions were beyond the horizon. You can't shoot with direct fire. P indirect fire was needed, at an angle from a canopy. But how to aim if you don't know where the previous shell hit? The solution: observers. Officers on the front line looked through binoculars, saw gaps, transmitted corrections via telephone cable or through couriers. Observers were raised higher, on balloons, then on airplanes. Aerial photography appeared. The Germans began to photograph French positions, draw maps, mark batteries. Artillery became blind but got eyes in the sky, and then sound reconnaissance. The British developed a sound-ranging system. Microphones on the front line detected the sound of an enemy gunshot. Triangulation determined its coordinates. The Germans responded by detecting flashes, flash spotting. If the battery fired at night, the observers saw the flash, took direction from the position. Counter-battery warfare began. Artillery fired not only at infantry but also at enemy guns. The war turned into a chess game of blind players trying to guess where the opponent was standing and kill him blindly. Now about what exactly was shot. Shells are different, and each type is designed for a specific method of killing. High explosive, HE, the simplest. Metal shell, explosives inside. The explosion creates a shock wave and fragments. Purpose: to destroy fortifications, mix trenches, create craters. One 150mm shell left a crater 3 meters in diameter. But against infantry in open terrain, high explosive shells are ineffective. Fragments fly chaotically. Most of them go into the ground or up. Shrapnel was invented for manpower, named after the British officer Henry Shrapnel, who proposed the design back in 1784. Principle: the shell is filled with lead bullets, about 300 pieces in a 75mm shell. Inside is a small powder charge with a timed fuse. The gunner sets the fuse so that the shell opens above the enemy's heads at a height of 5 to 10 meters. The bullets fly forward in a cone, like from a shotgun. One shell covers an area of 30 by 200 meters. The effect is like buckshot from the sky. At the Somme in 1916, the British fired 1.5 million shells during a week of artillery preparation. Most of them were shrapnel. The infantry that went into the attack expected to see destroyed German trenches. Instead, they saw Germans climbing out of dugouts and opening fire from machine guns. Shrapnel does not penetrate concrete. It kills people on the surface, but does not destroy shelter. 57,000 British casualties on the first day, the bloodiest day in British military history. Chemical shells are a separate category of horrors. The Germans started in April 1915 near Ypres. They opened chlorine cylinders. The wind carried the gas to the French positions. 5,000 dead in minutes. But cylinders depend on the wind. Shells do not. You fill the shell with a poisonous substance, shoot, it bursts, the gas is sprayed. First, chlorine, death by suffocation. Then phosgene, more effective, odorless. Then mustard gas affects the skin, eyes, lungs. There is no treatment. By 1918, a third of all shells were chemical. Gas masks helped, but not always. Mustard penetrated through fabric, leaving burns. People went blind, suffocated, and died for weeks. Chemical weapons did not change the course of the war, but they added another level of suffering. There were also illuminating shells, for night observation, smoke shells, for camouflage, armor-piercing shells, for tanks from 1917. Each type solved a specific task. Artillery became a universal tool, but the problem of quality remained. When production increased tenfold, control decreased. A large number of shells did not explode. Quote 3, as the British called them. According to various estimates, from 15% to 30% of shells turned out to be defective. Unburned gunpowder, a defective fuse, low-quality explosives. They got stuck in the ground and waited. 108 years later, they are still being dug up in Belgium. Now about how armies learned to use this weapon. The first attempt. Somme, 1916. British plan. A week of artillery preparation, destroy everything alive. The infantry will calmly take up positions. Reality. A week of shelling warned the Germans. They waited in dugouts, climbed out when the drumfire stopped. The result is known. The second attempt, Passchendaele, 1917. The British fired 4.3 million shells in a few weeks, but the battlefield turned into a swamp. The shells destroyed the drainage system. The rains did the rest. Tanks got stuck. The infantry drowned in the mud. The attack failed not because of the Germans, but because of their own artillery, which turned the ground into a liquid mass. Then the Germans proposed a new approach. 1918 Ludendorff's offensive. Instead of a long artillery preparation, a short hurricane shelling, 5 hours instead of a week. Without aiming trays, they shoot at pre-calculated coordinates using aerial photographs, a combination of high explosive, gas, and smoke shells. The goal, not to destroy, but to stun, disorient, suppress. The infantry moves immediately after the last shell. The enemy does not have time to orient themselves. The tactic worked. The Germans broke through the front by 60 kilometers.